Welcome to Planning for the Future, the podcast.
Welcome to the show. We're sitting here with Eric Lansford. He is the president of Sound Financial Investments out of Tacoma, Washington. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So how was your trip? Everything well?
It was wonderful. It was a nice, easy flight.
I have relatives that live up in that area in the Puget Sound, Vashon Island area.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, and it's that was very remote when my aunt and uncle built up there, but now it's quite highfalutin, I think. Isn't it?
It has definitely changed. They must have bought a few years ago because it's pretty populated now. There's some big companies up there. You got Microsoft, Amazon, you've got Boeing. I mean, it's a well developed and it's growing. It's
right.
Just growing astronomically.
And how does it work for you? Like, say, there's not a lot of snowbirding going on from the Washington area, is there?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. There is, and the reason being, it's called the Emerald State for a reason. It does rain.
Sure.
So about Halloween time, the rain faucet does turn on, and then it closes off. Come around April, May most years, but there are some people that will actually head south because they miss the sun.
What about people retiring up there? Do they stay or they move or?
Most people stay. And it just depends upon where they're established, right? So some people will stay in the major city of Seattle and Tacoma and those two. And then there's some huge suburb areas. So there's lots of little pockets of towns around. And we find a lot of people move a little bit to a little smaller, a little quieter of a community. But yeah, most people stick around.
Getting rid of the hustle and bustle.
A lot of it.
Yeah. But still being very comfortable. And it's very family oriented up there as well.
Very much so. There's tons of activities. There's always events. Being that each little town kind of has its own little character and style to it, you're going to see, the hometown parades. And where I live, it's a smaller town surrounded by bigger ones, but come every Halloween, they shut down Main Street and the kids just run up and down and all the store owners come out front with candy and they pass out candy. And, we're still in that small area where we get, 100 trick-or-treaters that'll come by our house. So it's fun. A lot of it has that family, those traditional values.
Good. That's always good. And it's probably good for you as far as when it comes to the long-term planning and everything, helping people out. How did you get started doing it?
Well, I've always had a fascination with money. I've really enjoyed it, not on the greedy side, but necessarily on what it can do and how to control it and how to do something different with it, right? And so I got started in 1994 and came in on the financial side, worked for a larger institution, and decided after a couple of years that really wasn't necessarily a great fit, but wanted to be able to offer more than just simply talking to somebody about a pot of money, right? And that's kind of what took us down the pathway of creating Sound Financial Investments was people are more than just that, a pot of money. You need to make sure as you kind of start getting ready to either go into retirement or saving for retirement or whether you're already retired, but you need to make sure that the protection side of your financial life is well taken care of, the growth side, and then the savings side. So we look at everything much more comprehensive than a lot of the other institutions out there.
Yeah, well, everybody is different. Everybody's financial situation is different. Even if you and your neighbor are both doctors or both construction workers or whatever, your financial situations are different.
Oh, and you're absolutely spot on, right? There is no magic product that's going to make everybody happy, wealthy, and wise, right? Financial strategies are just as unique as you and I. What might work in your world may not work in mine and vice versa. So it's more than just a one or two meeting process to go through with us. We need to meet a number of times because humbly, I have to get to know you. And you need to get to know me better before we start talking business, right? And so strategies are built over time. But once we educate you about the products, about the strategies, and how it actually does benefit you, now that rapport is established, the trust comes along, and you'll understand.
Right. And things have changed quite a bit in the area of long-term care planning. It's not a lot of that stuff that, our parents had where it was that use it or lose it type situation. You were putting that money, it was like car insurance. Well, you didn't use it, but it was there if you needed it.
Right.
Right. With all the asset-based long-term care planning and everything, it's really changed for the better.
It has, right? Especially in the state of Washington. It's been opened up in the last couple of years where, previously you really only had a long-term care plan. You might have had a little something in terms of a plan with the employer that you worked for, but as soon as you're retired, that plan goes away, right? So nowadays, it's not just a use or lose it product. It's how do we build this and integrate this into your overall financial life that if you need the assistance and the money someday, it's there for you. But if you don't, maybe you can pass those funds on, to your heirs.
Right. And that's one of the things that everybody, likes to worry about is I want to make sure that my kids are taken care of. I want to make sure that this is done. But at the same time, you really have to make sure that you're taken care of first and foremost.
Well, and there's a true statement behind that, right? We want to really have our money do three things, while we're retired or working. And that's to provide an income, right? That's to have some sort of security or protection to it because we can't have an outside force, whether it be taxes, inflation, or an illness or a sickness, or you get hurt or injured, you erode our wealth. And then lastly, we'd like to have something to leave to our heirs. Right? Whether that be children or grandchildren or a charity or a trust or a church, a school, whatever that might be. But we need to make sure all those three things happen.
I feel that times have changed. You don't see these multi-generational households that you used to see. People are spread out a little bit more, mostly due to the highway system.
Right.
People have moved all over the country, snowbirds, everything like that. And when it comes to that long-term care planning, because you can't really count on your kids and don't want to count on your kids to be the ones to take care of you now.
That's correct. After you find yourself in the position where you do need long-term care, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to go get a long-term care policy, right? And then part B, nobody wants to be a burden. Right? We want to be self-sufficient. We want to be able to still continue to live at home. And maybe we just get to the point where we need somebody to come in 1 or 2 or 3 days a week just to help us out, or maybe just a couple of hours every day that we allow that our normal caregiver, maybe a spouse or a child or somebody, to have some freedom to be able to live their lives too.
Right. And the unfortunate reality of it is, 7 out of every 10 are going to need some sort of long-term care within their life over the age of 65. And it's even that percentage is getting even higher.
It is. People are living longer, right? When we sit down and we talk to you about financial planning, it isn't for a certain period of time or for a life expectancy. We talk about age 100, age 110, because you can't run out of money. And long-term care is it's going up faster than what the inflation rate typically is going. So we need to make sure that if you're 65, 75, 85, 95, whatever age that is, that you have those pieces in place to be able to afford it.
Right. And say nursing homes. Nursing homes, you're looking at anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000, depending on where you are in the country, how, the level of the nursing home that you're in, $6,000 to $12,000 a month.
Yeah.
And if you haven't planned correctly, that money's going to go away quick.
Oh, yeah. People talk about, long-term care and these options are still expensive and their monthly payments and the premiums. But, boy, within 2 or 3 months of living in an assisted living facility, you'll have more than paid for what you paid into the policy. And you say $6,000 to $12,000. The $6,000 one is just for basic services. Right. It's that much money, and people need to understand that that's net of taxes every month. That's not $12,000 before taxes. Right. That's after taxes. So sadly, long-term care can eat away a big portion of your wealth that you'd like to leave to an heir or do something different with.
So when someone is starting out, what's your procedure?
Well, when you talk about starting out to actually take a look at long-term policies themselves. Yeah. So first and foremost, it takes 2 or 3 meetings for us to get to know each other, as I mentioned earlier, right? And then once we do that, we see what options and assets you have to take a look at now. And then how do we make those assets, in essence, put a turbocharger on them, right? To be able to create more than just one benefit. And then we start going down the pathway of how do we integrate long-term care into this such that if you ever need it, it's there for you. And again, if you don't need it, that money, those assets can be passed on to your heirs. That way you don't disinherit.
Right. And you can change what you've done. It's not like you put it in and it's set in stone.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where things have become much more flexible. Kind of what you talked about earlier in the program was they've just morphed and changed. So it really is something that's much better for the client than where it used to be.
Right. And so say I start off and I have $100,000 that I want to start off with.
Sure.
And as things go and progress, there's different levels, right? Where I can make it a little bit safer. There's safer investments, and then there's ones that you put money into, even if the market goes down, you're going to be pretty solid, right?
Right. And it's about how do we control our money, right? Most people are scared and they don't really understand what the stock market is about. They just know that when the stock market goes up and they see, positive numbers, there's a high probability they're making money. And when those numbers are red, they're losing money. But really, when the market has a drop, right? If we positioned our assets in a safe place, now we can take advantage of that opportunity. Because the old analogy of buy low, sell high, it's the number one rule of buying and selling stocks, but it's an old adage that still holds true. So if the market does come down, maybe we slowly but surely take a look at phasing back into the market and gaining some of those opportunities.
Right. And like I said, some of those programs where you're in, so that you have the different levels.
Yeah.
So even if the market takes a loss, you don't go back. So a loss is just a push.
Right. And so, well, again, what we can't do is have an outside force, say the stock market, erode away your wealth. Because if you need, $10,000 of that $100,000 that you talked about earlier every, year to live on, well, if the market has dropped 20, 30, 40%, right? And then you have to take money out at the same time, you're kind of killing off those worker bees that would allow that hive to grow back up again. So this is where it takes a strategy to have different pots of money to utilize at different times. You can't just leave all your money in stocks and bonds and hope that things are going to work out wonderful for you, because you can't control the biggest variable, and that's stock market.
Right. I love the hive analogy. That's great.
Right?
Yeah, you've got this hive working for you, and all your dollars are the worker bees.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I've heard it being called, leveraging and making $1 do the work of 4.
Sure, but people don't always understand how do we create that asset to create more than one benefit, right? And that's what we teach. That's why it takes more than just 1 or 2 meetings for us to sit and talk. I'm going to teach you about this whole process, right? And we're going to use a financial model with a simulator that's going to prove out the decisions that you're making are either beneficial or not. And if they're not, then we just take those and we cast them to the side, and we know what direction not to go in. So we can individualize all kinds of strategies just for you, right? Now we have different abilities that a typical investment company isn't going to have.
Right. And that's where, how everything has changed from that use it or lose it mentality to where it is now, where now you need someone like you who's willing to educate them and take them under their wing and get them where they need to be.
And that's really what happens when you sit and you meet with somebody 4, 5, 6 times. One of the benefits that happen are friendships. And so we have a multitude of client appreciation events that happen every year. The last one we did is there's a big LeMay car museum in Tacoma, and we